All right, we're live.
What time is it?
Time for you to get a watch. Did you buy the Apple Watch? Are you going to buy the Apple Watch?
We keep recording later and later. No,
Yeah.
everyone on Twitter tells me not to buy anything in Apple anymore because they're failing apparently at everything.
Well, the Apple Watch doesn't have a keyboard, so we don't have to worry about this.
Nice. You just bought a phone, didn't you?
Yeah. I'm retiring the 4-year-old iPhone 6.
You're going to feel like you're in an alien civilization with that
I'm going to be able to like tweets so much faster.
It is funny, everything that comes out, the spec increase is crazy over the last iPhone X. It was like significant processing power and graphics power.
Huh.
And the demos were crazy too. And then it's like all I do on my phone is I like the processing power because you can like kind of move back and forth quickly between apps and stuff, and it does make it feel like it's more useful to you.
So like 8 cores means you can alt-tab faster.
Exactly. But it would be interesting to see if and when there's like more real world uses for like the VR stuff and the AR stuff, the stuff that's really
Yeah, isn't there like that, like the technology adoption curve where like it's super hyped, then it plateaus, or then it dips, and then you go to like plateau of reality. There's like all these terms.
It's yeah.
So that AR stuff.
Modicum of success or something. No, not modicum. That wouldn't make sense. It's like the adoption is like, it's like mainstream adoption.
Yeah.
It's not going to make us all do the crazy things everyone thought it was going to do at the beginning, but like it enhances our life in some small way. Yeah. It was fun watching the product launch because we have been talking about product launches the week of the Apple event. So I thought it was fun.
Yeah.
Apple's the best at product launches. I don't know if anyone can deny that, even if they hate Apple. But you watch the keynote, and then you go to Twitter, and there's a promoted tweet. There's a video playing that is unbelievable. It's like some of the best produced advertising media in the world. Maybe you click on that, it goes to YouTube. There's like a YouTube specific version. They all have links to the next step in the process, which is like bringing you to the Apple site, getting you excited about it. Mm-hmm. Of course, the page on the Apple website is always just stunning. I mean, it's a stunning page. It's different every time too. Like every product has its own page, and it's just like, as web developers, you look at that and you know the amount of resources that went into it.
The thing that always impresses me about these Apple pages is they're like all the things we're not supposed to do, and they nail it. Yeah, so like the parallax scrolling.
It's so true.
You're not, if we do that, you install a jQuery plugin, that you're in this like uncanny valley of scrolling, but with these pages, it's
crazy.
Perfect.
Parallax scrolling on the iPhone site, and the watch site had full screen video in the background. So you scroll the watch page, and there's full screen video that plays in each kind of pancake of a feature, but it does it where it starts out at like full opacity, and it just starts playing. And they do this video that it's so cool that it starts playing and then it slows down. Like there's an athlete like swinging a baseball bat, and then as they slow down, like the watch is right facing the front of the camera. Mm-hmm. But you're scrolling too, and you scroll down and you kind of slow down to read the stuff. So it's this crazy. It feels like you're slowing down the video just based on how they did it almost.
So the video is timed with the information that comes into the screen?
It's just timed with like you getting into that pancake, but the way they do it makes it feel amazing. And then as the information scrolls up, there's a overlay that dims over the video so you can read the text. But it's all just like, you can select the text, like it's completely accessible in the sense of like if you were to copy paste anything you would expect to be able to do on a web page, you can do it, even though there's like this beautiful full page video on the background. Works in every browser. Like, you look at the mobile experience, it's amazing. Like you can't find a single flaw with these pages. And like the fact that they're just there for
what's the file size of their JavaScript? Because maybe we can find a flaw there.
Yeah. those people are. Yeah, they're laughing their way to the bank about these people on Twitter complaining about that. It's just amazing that the amount of effort that goes into this stuff for a product launch. It's a temporary thing. Like, you don't see the iPhone 8 page anymore, or maybe you do, or the 7 or something. You know, they were made for the launch, and now they're not there anymore. And then you went through the process of buying it last night, and that was also product triangle, right? Every aspect of it.
I mean, other than having to stay awake till 3 a.m.
Yes, that's true.
Because the world apparently revolves around Cupertino. No, but it was. I had the. I bought it on my cell phone, and I had the App Store open, and it all night it has this message. It's like, we'll be back soon. We're not quite ready. And then like 5 minutes before it goes on sale, the app just changes, and it says, okay, we're almost there. So there's like never this feeling of, oh crap, I need to like close and reopen the app. I need to like keep refreshing. I just knew that, okay, this thing's updating. It'll let me know when it's ready.
And it did.
It did.
And it was
went on
happy
sale.
to take your money.
Yeah. It's funny that you have to. I read this article on The Verge. It's like how to buy your iPhone so that you like get it next week. You get it on the first day it's available, and you basically like set up your Apple account so that when it does go on sale, you just all your information's filled out, and you're just clicking next, selecting the phone you want, the model you want. So when this thing launches, there was just like this moment of like panic for me where I'm like, okay, I got to get through this. Like, I got to get through this because
delayed a month or something.
If I don't get through this in 10 minutes, so like I finished the whole thing. There's never a point in the process where I'm like, should I really be buying this? Should I really be spending $1,000 on a phone? I was like, nope, go, get through this. So I thought that was, it was like,
interesting realization.
No second thoughts. No questioning this purchase.
You're actually trying to give them your money as fast as possible.
I mean, you are.
Yeah.
You really are.
Yeah. So Apple definitely nails the product launch, and I just think it's interesting because I feel like everyone knows this about Apple, but they have different opinions about it. They know that they spend a lot on marketing. Some people will say that in a very snarky way, or like it's frivolous. Mm-hmm. But you think about how much resources went into. I mean, they're advertising videos. Like, you watch that video on Twitter or YouTube of the It's Big or whatever, and it's just like amazing. Like, it's an incredible film, and it's just like an ad, you know. And it's like the amount of resources just putting that, we know how expensive video production is, just that thing alone. And then you think of the website and the App Store and all the infrastructure and everything about it.
And all these things have the same theme. They all tie together. They're all connected.
Consistent branding. Yep. Versus the actual features, quote, features of the phone.
I can't tell you. Like, I can't tell you what's in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But like when we talk about products, people are like, oh, so what's in the phone? But really what you're buying is so much more than that. And again, I think a lot of people hear something like that and they almost turn their nose up at it. Like you've heard of like manufactured demand or artificial demand. People create this in your minds, but really people buy things for all sorts of reasons. And I think Apple understands that very well. And they offer a premium product. And so they're going to segment people in that way, and people who are attracted to that kind of thing are going to be drawn towards it. And if you're buying a premium product, you'd expect all those things we just said, right? That's kind of part of it.
So for me, it's not a marketing gimmick. It's actually a signal.
Right.
If they can do all this stuff right, I'm not worried about them getting the phone right.
Yep, that's a great point. So tying this back to some of the stuff we were talking about last week, and you're saying like why thinking about Ember as a product. Let's say, why do people use Ember? And it's not because of some line 200 in the source. When Ember was started, we're working on some of the homepage stuff and looking at some of the old homepage work on the original design. And, some of the folks on the core team were talking about the brand and the Tomster and the colors and the feel, and how at that time especially, the brand was a differentiator, and it was important for them to make it feel friendly and welcoming because this area was like brand new, this area of like UI development on the web and JavaScript land. And it was important for it to feel welcoming. That should drive everything they do. And So that's part of what you're buying when you choose Ember, right? And if there's parts that don't feel welcoming, that's a sign to the product owner that there's a gap here in product, and this should be something that's adjusted. So when you're starting to think about whether you like Apple or not, they are very consistent. I think you could like almost argue that objectively across the board, they nail every aspect of the product launch. They understand the product triangle. What lessons can we learn from them when it comes to either working on Ember, working on our own apps, or working on our own open source projects? And I think there's a lot of lessons there. A lot.
Yeah.
So the talk I'm going to give is about a lot of this stuff, and we were talking today earlier, just trying to refine what the steps are, what the layout is, and it's really like it's this idea that and I was thinking about this because it's almost like all this stuff we talk about with product. It feels more recent. Like software development has been around for a long time, but the notion of product and a product owner and part of that comes from modern iterative development. Like we build things iteratively.
Yeah, I was going to say this is a big thing that changed.
Yeah.
Software soft. Like
waterfall to agile, basically. And that lets you get feedback and ship value in every iteration and all that stuff. All this stuff also relates to the edition stuff, which we should talk about as well. But to just kind of finish this thought, it's newer, and like us as engineers are building at a higher level than ever before. So we don't need someone who's specialized to run your database queries anymore, because a lot of that stuff has been abstracted away into like an ORM and like fast databases. And we don't need someone who's has as specialized knowledge about even HTML and CSS as you did 10 years ago. And so we're moving higher up, which means you have smaller teams working on things, like just you and I can build, the stuff that we build, where maybe it wouldn't have been possible 20 years ago because we wouldn't have had Heroku and all this stuff. So it's almost like the product stuff, more of the product stuff falls on our shoulders than ever before. So what I'm trying to say is that you could look at the Apple team and say they nail the product launch, and they have someone specific on video working on that ad video, and that person needs to be like the best ad video person ever. Mm-hmm. And then the person doing the website needs to be like the best website person ever. And then there's gonna be someone above that who's coordinating and ensuring the consistency. But so engineers tend to think of themselves as implementers in specific roles. But I think because we're operating at a higher level, these lessons from product are really useful to even specialized engineers today.
So you're saying that the tooling is so good nowadays that it's understanding how these tools wire up together and being able to take advantage of it? Is that where you're going? Like,
it's so easy to build software today, relatively speaking, that you can build almost anything. And so the question now becomes not if this is possible, but what should we actually build, which is a huge part of product. Mm-hmm. And I think that software engineers, since they understand everything about software development, bring a lot to the table when it comes to answering that question, which is what should we build? What should we even build? Should we even be building this right now? Should we be doing something else? And so, again, this is what I hope to address in the talk, is to say that you're a coder, you value being a coder, you like code, that's why you're at this conference, right? That's why we're in the Ember community and do open source, and you want to be the best engineer you can be. And you want to do your job the best. And usually we think of ways to do that. The way you would get better at being a coder is like, learn you a Haskell for, what is it? Learn you a Haskell for great good or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah, you'd learn new languages, you'd learn new styles of programming.
Design patterns. And you practice coding, and most of it's focused on the activity of coding. But is so much of what you do and how what you do affects whether or not you're going to have like a successful product launch in whatever context you happen to be launching a product, whether it's Apple or Ember. If so much of what you do affects that, then actually becoming a better coder means understanding those things as well. Because once you learn the aspects of the product triangle, starting at the end, small iterative development, delivering customer value with every iteration, all the stuff we talked about last week, once you understand that stuff, that's actually going to change how you code and what you code. So it's actually, those things are going to change you as a coder, even though it's easy for us as engineers to conceive of ourselves as kind of implementers. Just tell me what to do. I'm going to make that the best implementation possible.
Yeah, I know the best API. I have the most clever way of wiring two things together to accomplish this.
Right. And what I'm saying is these things aren't as independent as we're used to thinking. And maybe as they were when we did need more specialized things. Like maybe at NASA, you know, someone's building like this wing of the rocket, and they are not going to, they're going to give some input, but really their full job is going to be that so complex.
I'm trying to think. So
and at bigger companies, it might be true too, but a lot of us are in a situation where the engineers can provide extremely valuable feedback to the product decisions if they know this stuff.
So their feedback would be sort of like what's feasible, what's not feasible, what are the trade-offs, like timeline. So, you know, we can deliver this by this date, but if we take out this feature, we can do it by this date.
Exactly. The trade-offs involved with whether this needs to be some really fancy part of the UI or if we could do it in some other way. And who's making those trade-offs? In an ideal case, you have a product developer who is really knowledgeable about this stuff, but it's not always true. Like many teams don't have that. Mm-hmm. And so the question is, like, you're going to be a coder on a team where there's a gap in product. You don't have someone who's pulling the strings the way someone is at Apple to guarantee these incredible product launches. So now what can you do to be the best coder you can in that context? And partly is going to be stepping in and filling in that gap. It's going to make you a better coder because you're going to be working on stuff that's actually going to get used. You're not going to be frustrated by shipping projects that aren't used by the customer. You're not going to feel like you're working on 3 different things at the same time, 3 different number 1 priorities. You're not going to always feel like you're coding at night to hit a deadline, right? If you're like coding after hours, after all the meetings are done, that's like, this is the thing where it's like a lot of times people think if they were only better coders, technically,
I could get so much more done. If I could only get like GraphQL implemented faster, that would solve all my problems.
Right. And so I just need a few more hours at night, tonight, this weekend, and I'll get caught up. And it never happens.
Because it's not what you need.
It's not what you need. It's so tempting to think that because as coders, we know how powerful software and code is. Because the first time we all learned how to code, you just sat there and you typed at the keyboard and then you made something happen and you're like, this is going to solve all my problems.
The technical ability unlocks so much.
Right.
But the reality is like you only need 10% of that.
Right.
And you don't know which 10%. Like
right.
You have to find that 10%.
Right. Exactly. And the symptoms of a gap in product that you see on teams sometimes drive engineers to think, because it's related to code, seemingly, it drives engineers to think that they need to code more or code harder, better, faster, stronger.
Yeah, I mean, a great example of this is maybe reducing bundle size. Mm-hmm. Like I'm an engineer and I have tools to reduce my JavaScript bundle size, and that's what I need to do. But that might not be the best thing for your product.
Right, right. So, we were talking about this earlier, and there's a role for product on every team in some capacity, even if you're a solopreneur. Like, even if you're on your own making software products, you need to dedicate some time. There are product decisions that are going to be made regardless if you dedicate time to it or not.
Let's be super like aggressive about this. Like, not only is there a role, but like there are product decisions that are 100% absolutely being made.
Right.
It's just, are you aware of them?
Right. Exactly. And everyone can see how if you're a solo developer, solo business, solopreneur, it's better to be aware of those product decisions and to surface them and make them explicitly because they're driving your business. And then you go to a bigger company, the NASA example where it's like, I'm a mechanical engineer. I can't design this whole thing. Like I'm not a rocket scientist, but I'm going to implement this thing. So I'm just going to focus on the implementation. But then there's, I think, a lot of companies, a lot of teams in the middle ground. And there's a lot of engineers who self-identify as the implementers. But there's a product gap because product is like misunderstood in our industry. It's young in our industry. We're all still learning about it, like as an industry. And so you have teams like maybe Apple, Slack, Wistia, these great software products that are being made who have people who really understand product. And there's either one person or a team of people who are just owning that. They're responsible for the success of the product. They make sure that the engineering team doesn't get too much in their heads, and they represent the customer, right? That's really what they do. Is because as coders, we can just get into the code and just code and code and code. And we forget what it is we're actually doing, which is delivering value in some way. And so really the product has an understanding of the tech stuff, but they represent the customer, and they are their advocate. And so they make sure that's why like every iteration needs to deliver value for me, because I'm the customer, I'm who you're working for, right? But with teams that don't have that, and yet the majority of the engineers are seeing themselves as implementers, that's where you have the gap, right? And so
let's bring this back. What are some ways that what are some ways you can spot this gap?
Yeah, some symptoms that this is happening. Well, I think it's what we were talking about before. I think 3 number one priorities.
Yep.
I think that is definitely something that people confuse as a tech problem, and it's not. So you're coding after hours. You're coding, and it feels like all the work you're doing on this massive app is moving an inch in every direction, and you're not actually finishing anything. You are having a hard time estimating when you're going to be done with stuff.
Yeah, I like the idea of you finish a sprint and you're not sure what the value was that you delivered.
Yep.
Because, like you said, that's product's role. So if you know the value after every sprint, you have a good product process.
Right. You're talking to people in the hallways and they're asking, oh, what'd you all do this last 2 weeks? And you said, oh, well, we were doing some like low level things, like we fixed tests, or we made this like component we're going to be able to use in the rest of the app. It's kind of what you just said, right?
Yeah.
But if you're having to explain that,
well, it'd be much better to say like, oh, we fixed up the implementation of I don't know, the settings page, and it no longer crashes.
Right.
And so we shipped that to production.
Right.
Now that the actual details there were we wrote tests.
Right.
And we got CI running the thing.
Right.
But you can tie it back to how it affects the customer, how it delivers value,
right,
how it solves their problem.
Right. So yeah, lots of symptoms there, again, that are very easy to mistake as tech, as the root cause being a tech thing and not a product gap. Because if you did have tech problems, well, what kind of symptoms would we see if there was legit engineering issues on a team?
Site goes down for 2 hours every day. Vulnerabilities, like security vulnerabilities.
Inconsistent design, maybe.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Maybe that's more of a tech design side than a product side.
Yeah. Maybe the
browser inconsistencies, like really bad, like doesn't work in another browser or something.
The feature's built to spec, but what you thought was going to take 30 seconds and ends up taking 30 minutes.
Right.
And there's probably some
or even
product,
more, right?
Yeah.
Like there's so much tech that you're just moving so slow. Even though you have a focused roadmap, you're just you can't build. Yeah. You're on a team and it's moving like factors slower than you've ever seen before.
Yeah. It's hard. I'm kind of realizing it's hard to oh, this is definitely a tech problem. This is definitely a product problem. All this stuff, it all flows into the product. Everything's tied together.
Right.
One lever affects the other side.
Right.
So,
and you can definitely have a situation where a product person is asking, there's a good product person, and they're asking, hey, tech person, can we have this be an autocomplete search box on the homepage? And then the tech person says, and they say, we'd like it to be autocomplete search, but not if it's going to take too long. So, if it's going to take a day or two, we're gonna say yes, because we can deliver that this time. If it's going to take 5 days, then it's not worth it. And then the tech person says, yeah, I'll take a day or two. And then it ends up taking 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's again, they're related here. It's not as simple as you can't blame the engineer or blame the product person. That's why velocity is important, and understanding the true cost of things, which is why you want to measure things and back those things out. But there's definitely both sides can happen. So engineers tend to focus on the coding side and trying to understand how long things take. But these other symptoms of the competing priorities, inch in every direction, feeling like I'm working on 10 different things, being stuck in meetings during the day and coding at night, those tend to be product symptoms for sure. So now the question is, if you are on a small team with a product gap and you don't have the luxury of just having, like, let's hire like the best product manager ever to run this thing, what can you do?
Yeah.
That's a big question, right? First of all, do you like?
Well, I'll say that every team I've worked on, and like teams I've run, teams I've worked on, have all had these sort of problems to some degree.
Right.
Like there's no like, oh, this is perfect, everything's working. There's it's almost like these things are all these decisions that go into running a tech team. They're all in tension with each other, so nothing's ever perfect. Trying to think like what are things that you can do? Like how can you as an engineer kind of do like a bottom up approach to solving some of these product problems?
Right.
I think asking a lot of questions is like a great way to start. You can't go into work and say, hey, we need product process. We need to be Apple, because everyone's going to look at you and say, hey, we're not Apple.
Yeah.
So I think one of the ways that you can defend against this is just asking a lot of questions, saying like, someone comes and says, we need an autocomplete text box.
Yeah.
And you might know what an autocomplete text box looks like, but you just ask a lot of questions to get on the same page with that person who's asking you that. And you're both going to realize, like you're going to realize, and you're going to convince them through your question asking that like, hey, maybe there's a gap here. Maybe I need to raise this to more people. And you kind of, that person that's asking you to create that autocomplete text box, they're pushing the product decisions onto you.
Right.
So by you asking questions, what happens? Like, is there a timeout? When do we show the loading spinner? Or there keyboard navigation? Like all these questions that come up, you're pushing the product decisions back onto them. And then now they can push it onto the right person. They can push it off to other people. And that lets the whole organization kind of feel the pain of, hey, these product decisions aren't being made. It's before the development happens. So you not like, it's not deflecting. It's just, I can't make this decision. I'm going to ask questions. I can't make this decision, but I'm not going to sit there with my arms crossed and saying, I can't do that.
Right.
I need more info. You just ask a lot of questions.
That was great. You're on a roll there, because that was like really well said. It's also making it clear that in software, everything is a trade-off, and there's a million things we could do at any given time. The question is this one worth it? And the only person who can make that call, is it worth it at that level? It's ultimately the business, ultimately the owner of the resources, who's saying, yeah, it's worth it. I'm choosing to invest $100,000 in this part of the application because I expect to receive a return on it or something like that. And that's a guess that the business makes always, and then it either turns out to be right or wrong, and that's why we iterate. But ultimately, like, understanding the nature of software and the trade-offs of every feature, and a lot of times it's not talked about. And also, this is where sometimes coders can go wrong, because we love making really cool stuff. Like,
we also love being right.
Yeah.
So if someone asked you to make an autocomplete text box, you'd be like, it's super easy.
Yeah.
I'm going to wire up Ember concurrency.
Yeah.
I'm going to use...
You start thinking about the implementation immediately.
But yeah, no, it's almost like you have to say like, okay, yes, I can make an autocomplete text box, but
it's going to cost you. Like, how much are you willing to pay for it? I mean, that's kind of what you're trying to get at, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really
true. So use this as a trade-off.
Yep. So
when your boss tells you to take a Jira ticket, say, how much?
How much are you willing to pay for that Jira ticket? Right. And again, that's a lesson that engineers can learn from good product developers, because good product developers are constantly making those trade-offs when they're grooming the backlog, right? That's what you're doing. Yep. You're deciding the next priority thing, and you're understanding the cost, and you're saying that you're doing the cost benefit analysis and saying that this one's worth it, this one's up next.
What about some other things? Well,
let's think of those symptoms, because we're kind of saying here, it's like, someone could be listening and saying, well, I'm an engineer, like, that's not my job. And now you're telling me I have to learn 2 jobs. Like, I have to keep up with all this tech and front-end world, and now I have to understand, like, product development, which is a whole discipline and career path and, like, industry of itself.
I mean, I would push back here, and I would say you're making these product decisions by just building whatever feature
they say,
just by building an autocomplete text box. And so it's much better to be aware of it.
It's
right?
better, but what if they say, I like coding and I'm just going to code. I think the way you answer this is to say, no, what you care about is the fact that you're working weekends, that you're working after hours, that you're frustrated at work because 3 people are telling you to work on their thing. So we're trying to say that's the benefit to you as a coder is to learn how to get out of those frustrating situations.
And even if you don't have those systems, if you just like coding and you're just coding, like the job is you're either riding on the coattails of someone else in your company.
That's true.
Or your job's going to dead end soon,
That's
or your
true.
company's going to go under.
That's
so
true.
if you want to find yourself,
that's like a higher level of Maslow's like hierarchy, right? But like if you're not thinking about, it's true. Like you will be a better coder if you learn this stuff, because part of being the best coder and engineer you can is building the most valuable and best software you can for your users.
You want your just coding to be sustainable,
right?
And the only way that's sustainable is if there's good decisions being made
on the product level. Yep, 100%. That's good. Also, this other stuff, which is like, because I think a lot of people are frustrated when they do just want to code and have that be sustainable and make sure that they're doing the best job they can and not be competing in priorities and all this stuff. So that's another reason, motivation why you'd want to learn this. Why it's worth it to you to invest a night away from Haskell and towards learning product stuff so that you understand, like you're saying, not deflecting, but putting boundaries up to say that this is a product decision and I can't make this on my own. It's like a doctor who would describe what's happening, but the doctor can't make the decision for you. If the doctor tells you, you have something wrong with your liver and then here are the 3 options, they can't then make a decision. You have to make a trade-off based on what you value, your money, your time, like your priorities. It's different for everybody. And that's like that's the analogy here. And those product decisions, so you're the software engineer, you have the most knowledge about how much things cost, what the options are, and maybe a business person is going to say autocomplete search box, but there's a much simpler way to solve that problem. So you need to present the options to make sure they understand the trade-off that they're making.
Yeah, and this is a great point. This is what we're building at such a high level, and this is where software developers can bring so much value to the product conversation. Because there's so many tools out there, and they know how they compose, and they know the costs. And
absolutely. So some other things we just talked about.
Not just going off and building.
And building autocomplete.
So what about I'm working weekends? I'm in meetings all day.
Yep.
And I do my coding at night and on the weekends.
I think that's where the stuff we talked about last week comes in, where it's explaining that product is the bottleneck and the team is not able to fire on all cylinders because engineers are spending time not engineering.
So but how do you
communicate that?
Yeah.
What do you do in that situation? I think part of it is just explaining that. I mean, trying to think like the most success we've had solving this problem either for ourselves or for others is like, we like Kanban. We like user stories that are at a high enough level but have enough specificity to be built. Mm-hmm. So honestly, sometimes people don't even know, if there's not an experienced product person on the team and it's just like someone higher up in the business or someone who is maybe a customer support person who is like helping you decide what the features are and what should be built next, but they don't have enough knowledge or experience in software to understand all those questions that you were asking before. What happens when all this stuff happens? And so sometimes just sitting with that person who is who's driving the requirements, and going through one feature at the level of detail that you would need, all the questions an engineer would ask. What happens when the credit card is declined? What happens when the server is down? What happens if they refresh the page halfway through? And so that's the level of specificity you would need to just be able to go and crank it on the code. And if you don't have a series, basically a roadmap, a product roadmap, a backlog of cards that are to that level, then you're going to be in meetings, spending time clarifying the requirements. And you're going to be coding at night, basically. I guess that's especially if the meetings are to help you clarify, which usually the meetings are about clarifying things.
Yeah, either for you or for someone else.
Yes.
Status updates for them.
Right.
Questions for me. Yeah.
And that's why a good product developer who represents the customer is going to be speaking at the level of the customer, which everyone should be able to understand because you're all building that software, right? And I mean, I guess that was kind of hand wavy because like you could imagine a really complex piece of software that is only really well understood by the people who use it. But anyways, at a high level, the customer advocate needs to be there, and there needs to be a tool, usually like a Trello board for us. It could be anything, where the stories, the features, the slices are laid out in a way that is again delivering value to the customer, so that we know, and then you can use that space to focus the team and have that specificity there. And so I think that's pretty powerful. Also, like if you have that feature card and you have the engineering team, let's say design and engineering, you spend the time to be in a meeting and have a card or two or three ready to go. And you've gone through it with everyone in the room, so you know everything that an engineer would need to know. And there's always going to be things that come up, but everything you could know at the beginning in that room with the business people. Then you go to that week of work and you design and develop those 3 cards, and they're all tied to customer value because they're in that level, and then you ship those things. And now the rest of the organization sees how fast you can move if you're able to actually do your stinking job, right? Because you're not in dang meetings all day. So what happens is, like, when engineers get distracted, you just kill their productivity, because engineering is a creative act. Software writing is a creative act. Design is a creative act. We all know you have to get in flow state to really be productive. And when you are, there's times when you're working at night and you actually know what you're working on. Maybe you're working on a side project because now you are the product owner. You get to make all the decisions. You have to wait in meetings. And you get cranking, and in 2 or 3 hours, you can be more productive than you were in 2 or 3 days.
It's funny. I think there's a Paul Graham essay that talks about how he would like start coding from like 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. And then sleep till like 11 a.m. every day, because that's when he could be productive.
He could be productive, yeah. So if you can communicate why the team is moving slow, if the rest of the team is frustrated that everyone's moving slow, and you can start to communicate these ideas about needing the specificity and the details, and then you get that for a week or two and get to focus on the implementation, you should be able to really deliver some serious customer value in a short period of time, especially relative to how fast the team has been moving, and everyone should get excited about that.
Yeah. I think something that's important when you're talking about finding these cards, it's you want to make sure that you're not talking about implementation. You're
Right.
talking in a language that like literally everyone in the company can understand.
Right. I can create a new issue.
Yeah.
Like if we were just doing GitHub.
Yep.
That's like too techy. Let's say Twitter. I can create a new tweet.
I get a notification.
And again, the specifications for I can create a new tweet would be like, first of all, ideally a design or a mock-up, or at least some high-level thing that a designer can take and design, and what the button looks like, what it does when you click on it. Okay, what happens when you click on it but then you hit escape, or I click over here. Once I submit the tweet, what happens to the rest of the site? Because you need to know that.
Yep.
And that's the kind of question that an engineer would ask that maybe a business person wouldn't, because they would just say, oh, you just like created the tweet.
Yep.
And so that's the specificity you need.
So I think as an engineer,
No cards about migrating a database.
Right. So I was going to say, I think if you're an engineer and you're in these meetings and other developers are bringing up the implementation details, well, we're going to first set up this Redis cluster, and I think part of eliminating these meetings is shutting that stuff down.
Yep. One thing, that's what the product person would do, right? They would say, shutting those down and just saying,
which is hard, which is super hard. I mean, you can't say that doesn't matter, but maybe there's some things you can say to get it like back on track. Maybe no one knows in the room what on track is, but you do. So maybe there's some things you can say that are like, okay, great, but how does that affect the rest of the screen? Mm-hmm. Or you could just say, dude, that's an implementation detail. It's how to win every argument, right?
Yeah. No, that's really good. That's really good. Because we know engineers you can get down into it really quick. You can just get into those back and forths. So, I think that's probably one of the most powerful things you could do as an engineer to help fix that problem.
Yeah. I've just to expand on this a little, like when I'm thinking about like my tasks, I like to have those high level features, but then I also attach like either subtasks, or I just have like a notebook where I write down sort of, okay, I need to be sure to write a test for this. I need to migrate the database. Like it's not about eliminating those things. Like those are the things that need to be done.
And you want to capture them when you think about them.
Yeah. Yes. But you don't want you don't want them to you don't want the whole organization involved in those decisions. You don't want the whole team involved in those decisions,
right.
because they might. Yeah, it's mixing the implementation with the goal,
right,
and the trade-off, and
right. And you should be focused on the goal and the trade-off. Yep. There's a sub point here too that's more applicable, even more applicable with design, because everyone has an opinion about design, and they can get distracted with the implementation details of the design versus the goal the design is trying to achieve. So if we were professional designers, which we're not, but there's a thing here that's like, what's a symptom? Everyone is arguing about the color of the button for hours, and
yeah, people keep bringing up edge cases about the theming and
right. Then it's like you want to bring it back, and if you had a product owner there, they would be again representing the customer. Okay, I'm glad that you think the button should be blue. What does that mean for me? Like, what our goal is to help me get my pet to the vet faster. Like, then it's like, okay, yeah, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Or we should add a carousel here or whatever. It's like, how does that help me as a customer? So, yeah, product owner is a super important role.
What were some of the other symptoms?
So we went through 2 so far. One was the autocomplete. What was the symptom that we were addressing in that one when we said don't build the autocomplete?
The
Just like taking too long, missing deadlines, basically. Like everything takes too long because no one's pushing back and making the trade-offs.
Yep.
And then meetings all day and coding at night.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we have a good answer for this one, but 3 number 1 priorities.
Yeah.
I'm on 3 different projects with different stakeholders, different customers.
Yep.
And they are all fighting for my time.
Tooth and nail.
Yeah. And not only that, but they have learned the best way to get to me is to not use Jira or not use like the issue tracker. It's to come over to my desk and say, hey, could you help me out with this?
That's really good. So what do you do here? So one thing that I remember you telling me when we were working together is like you just need to recognize which decisions you can make and which you can't. It's back to the doctor analogy. What's a responsible doctor going to do? They're going to stay in their domain of expertise. They have a scope within the problem set, and they're going to diagnose it, and they know whether something's wrong with your liver or your appendix, but they can't make a decision for you. So same thing as if you're not empowered to make a product decision, which is ultimately a trade-off for the business about guessing which things are going to be most valuable, you have to say, I can't make that decision for you, sir, right? The same way a doctor would.
I think there's a more friendly way.
No, because the patient's going to say, like, kill me, doctor, or whatever, and you say, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to do that.
One thing I like to do.
I think we should just tell people to go straight to the blunt. Yeah.
I like having a board that shows what I'm working on.
Yes.
A Trello board, and there's the cards are prioritized, and there's only one thing I'm working on, and that's the top thing. And if you come up to me and you say I should be working on it, I'm gonna say, okay, like I'm working on this now. Should I drag your thing up to the top?
And that's the one here. So let's get there. So first, it's just saying to people that first is understanding that you can't make those decisions, and that when 3 people are asking you to do something by the end of the day, that
I don't know. I think this kind of goes back.
Even if it's internal.
Yeah, internal. But I think this goes back to it's like an ego or a software developer thing where someone comes up to you and it's like, hey, can you do this really quick change for me? Can you just put this button on this side of the page?
Once you say yes.
Oh, you're done.
No, but
you're done once you say yes.
Once you've said yes a couple times and you keep getting burned by that, eventually you will understand that this is not something you can code your way out of. This is not a problem you can code your way out of.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, if you keep telling yourself,
I think people can say yes for years.
I mean, they can, but that's because what we're saying though is that the problem is not that you're not technically skilled enough.
100%.
But you need to understand that when people say yes for years, it's because they think if they just got a little bit more skilled, they would work. And what we're saying is that no, there's actually a different problem.
Yeah.
The root cause is not that at all. So I think it's important to have a mental change, a mindset change here, and understand that this problem is never going to go away. You can talk to any of your fellow engineers. Mm-hmm. The most technically skilled coders are going to have experience with this. And not until you understand the difference between tech, engineering, and product are you going to understand how to avoid this problem.
Preach.
So I think that it is important to start off with this, because otherwise you're always going to feel like that's your responsibility. Because I was hired to do an amazing job on the tech side, and my job is to say yes to everyone. And the reality is that I don't care how good of a coder you are, you can't build everything at the drop of a hat. You can't. There's trade-offs. That's the reality of it. So once you have that mental shift and internalize that and understand it's not your job to say yes to everyone, and it's not your responsibility to do whatever anyone asks you.
Can I add to this too? And there's a thing that happens here, but people won't be disappointed if you say no to them.
That's another thing that you taught me. It's so tempting for us to just say yes when someone asks us something, especially on the tech side. But once you taught me this, because you said someone's going to ask you how long you think that's going to take, and you want to just be like, I know, I'm thinking about it, I can just bang this out, man. Ember makes me so productive, and then inevitably it takes you longer. So what you do the very first time is just double your estimates. You literally in your head you think it's going to take me about 2 days. Just say, open your mouth and say 4 days.
And you'll be so shocked when the person is just like, okay.
They don't even bat an eyelash.
Yeah.
Because
and then you
trust
can double
you.
it again.
Yeah.
You can double it again.
They trust you, and you're the expert. And so that's such a good first step in understanding that it doesn't have to be a fire alarm all the time, and that you have to be coding at night to finish this stuff.
And when someone asks you how long this is going to take, they're not testing your technical ability.
Right.
So
right.
It's not about how long is this going to take, like subcontext, how good of a coder are you? It's
right.
not.
Right. Exactly. So that's so huge, because otherwise this product gap is not your fault, and it manifests itself as 3 people asking you to do stuff. And if you let them, you're going to bear all the stress of that by coding at night. By continuing to say yes, you're going to bear the brunt of all those bad product decisions that are being made that are beyond your control. And so doubling your estimate and putting up that wall is the first way to get out of this. So tactically, that's one thing to do. Next thing is what you were talking about, which is it's ridiculous for someone to say I'm working on 3 things at once, because it's not possible. It's literally possible to work on one thing at a time.
Maybe if you had like 2 keyboards, and you have one hand on each keyboard.
What's that GIF with the fingers that go out and like code with like 50 fingers?
There you go.
Maybe the iPhone XX in 2024 will let us like, you know. You can only do one thing at a time. And when you're DMing with people and managers are emailing you and you're having stand-up and you're coding at night, people don't understand viscerally that you are literally only able to do one thing. So one of the tactics is, how can we make that visceral and visual and easy to understand? And the Kanban board is great because it's a list. It's a flat list. It should answer the question, what is Sam working on right now? And there should be one thing. If my name is attached to 5 different things, then...
I mean, one of the things we do when we help folks set up the system is we add like a doing lane.
Right.
And then we have people's pictures on the cards. And if there's ever a situation where someone has 3 cards in the doing lane, we just say like, hey, John, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, are you doing these 3 things? And everyone gets it.
Yep.
And then John's like, nope, takes 2 of them out.
Yep, exactly. Yep. And this also helps you, like, if John's part is done, but it needs review from someone else, then you have a different lane that he can move that to. But John's doing one thing. So this is good because it shows the one thing John's working on, and also John's backlog, or the backlog of cards that are assigned to John, are in a single prioritized order. And if you take something and say that this is now the most important thing on your plate and you move it, it's going to push everything else down. And you can just see the things being deprioritized. Yeah. So 3 number 1 priorities is literally impossible in a single list of prioritized cards.
There's a lot of folks that don't even have prioritized lists. It's just software, businesses change constantly, priorities change constantly. But just the fact that you only have one thing you're doing, and if someone asks you to do another thing, that there's this act of them having to take that other
Right.
thing off your plate and put another thing on it.
Right.
Like, there's so many times where people will say, oh, you know what, never mind.
Right. Totally. And that's the trade-off being made. That's literally the business trade-off being made, that until then you were actually kind of making yourself, or you were actually, no one was making that trade-off because you were just picking it up. And so that's why you're working extra hours and taking on all that stress yourself. So by doing that, you're forcing them to make the trade-off, and it's way better.
Yeah.
Because now the business is going to actually focus and prioritize and ideally make the right trade-offs and evaluate those trade-offs, but they're not kidding themselves. So, I just thought of another symptom. I just thought of another great symptom.
Okay.
We just need more engineers.
Yeah.
We just need a bigger team. If only we had more resources.
Yep. I mean, this is also probably every team I've worked on, this conversation has come up.
Do you think Apple doesn't need more engineers? Couldn't do more with more engineers? Do they have a product problem? See what I'm saying?
I mean, yeah.
So I'm having a hypothetical conversation with someone who's telling me they're a small company and it's like, our main problem is we need more engineers. Right? It's just not true.
How do you...
Your main problem is that you're not prioritizing well. Of course, more engineers lets you grow more. And maybe there is a point where you have done everything you can with your team and you are ready to grow more and you need more engineers. But more engineers to solve the 3 priorities problem, that's the symptom. That is actually not a matter of engineering resources. It's a matter of product and prioritization.
So what can you do? Like, let's say your boss comes to you and says,
you start saying no to things.
no, but your boss comes to you and says, okay, like, I want to hire some, back-end experts to speed along the development of this API. Like, how do you, what do you do?
Why are they? I guess the question is, why do they want to hire more back-end developers?
Things are going slowly. We've got a deadline we have to hit. All the usual things. We want to launch this feature next month.
Have you missed the deadline before? Have you missed deadlines before?
Well, let me pick a previous job. Sure. Well, just the deadline is arbitrary. It kind of just shifts every month, and new features get added and removed. We're shipping code to production every week, but
Do you have a hard time estimating when things are going to get done?
Of course.
Okay. So yeah, I would say that if you have a hard time estimating when things are going to get done, if it's unpredictable how long things are going to take, then those are symptoms not of a lack of engineering resources. It's a symptom of the product process problem. And so if you were telling me that you knew when things were going to get done, you just want them to get done faster. Like, we have this 4 engineers and we are able to get, this amount of work done every 4 weeks, and it's pretty consistent, and we just want to shrink that down. We think we could with double the resources. That's one thing. Mm-hmm. But if you're telling me that we don't ever ship anything, or there's so much bugs in our system, that's the thing, right? If every time we ship, it's like super buggy and not well tested, and like the software is very unreliable, and then you have a product problem. You're doing too much and you're not prioritizing and making those trade-offs.
You could like flip this. Someone comes to you and says, hey, I want to hire more engineers, and you could say, hey, you know what would really help? If we hired a product person. And that way, the person's open to hiring to fix the problem.
Yes.
So let's get the attention away from the engineers.
But you have to convince that person, because they think their problem is engineering.
Right.
And so we have some of what we're talking about, right? Which is, you have to convince the person. They have to understand what are the symptoms of low capacity engineering resources, an understaffed engineering team, and what are the symptoms of a product gap. So, so as an engineer, those are really some tactics that are very powerful. Saying doubling your estimate as a first step, and just not saying yes to everything, exposing those trade-offs, and communicating in some way, whether it's a Trello card system, a Kanban, that you can work on one thing, and when someone asks you to work on something that is make this your number one priority, that means making something else your number 2 priority and making that very explicit to everyone involved. So sometimes, it involves like if people are DMing you, like you want to put a barrier up and make sure those people are talking to each other. Like that's an email I've sent before, right? Which is like, oh, Mary has already asked me to do this. I'm sorry, John. Like, I think you and Mary need to talk to figure out what my number 1 priority should be right now.
Yeah.
Because again, you're the doctor. You're saying how long things are going to take, but you can't make a decision on behalf of the business.
Nice.
So, yeah, a lot of good stuff in here.
Totally.
I love talking about this stuff. It's so fascinating. And I also the story of engineers feeling like all these symptoms, they're just very common. Like it's very common to talk to engineers who are overworked, coding at night, frustrated that they're not able to just have fun at work and focus on coding well. I mean, we're craftspeople. We like doing the best we can at our work. When you get the time and space to work on something that is high value and you're just do a bang up job of it, nothing feels better. And that is why one of the ways people get into open source is because they know that they can control that there, and your workplace could be the same. It could be as good of an environment for you to work in, So I think that's partly why we like talking about this stuff, because we've seen these tactics work, and yeah, your job can be so much better, and you can get a team. When you see a team going from basically moving nowhere to firing on all cylinders, it's like amazing how much different it is.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And it's not unlocking some programming knowledge, hiring a genius. You can take people that are in a bad spot and just get them flying.
Right. So yeah, and getting this product stuff right means like you're just going to be ready to go, not only for what you're working on now, but everything. Like the team is just going to be able to work on the next project. Estimation is not going to be a problem. Deadlines aren't going to be a problem. So stuff is really important. Yeah, so we kind of got away from talking about Ember a little bit there, but obviously this stuff is related, and I think all this stuff goes into figuring out what product looks like for companies. It's a lot of what we were talking about, but even with Ember and open source, there is a product area, and it has all these aspects of it. And like we didn't even talk, there's so much more to talk about. Scoping down enough to make sure your product launch is good. I wanted to talk about the Ember Edition stuff, but that'll have to wait maybe until next week. But Apple has the crazy resources. They nail their product launches, and yet they still they say no to a ton of stuff. They have, what's the Air Power Pad thing that everyone keeps asking where that is?
There were all these, Air Power.
There were more leaks.
There were all these rumors, new iPad, new AirPods, and
who knows what blocked the new iPad from coming out? It could have been a marketing video. Seriously.
That would be, I wish they would talk about this because that would be so powerful.
It would be powerful. People would say, oh, wait, we can't do a product launch if we don't have docs for this. We can't launch this feature if we don't have docs. And actually goes beyond docs. It goes to, a blog post communicating the motivation, why.
You had the narrative.
Yeah. You had a great tweet about this.
I quote tweet. Riding on the coattails.
Exactly, yeah.
I think Dan Abramoff.
How to make yourself look smart.
Yeah, exactly.
Retweet Dan Abramoff.
Exactly. Dan Abramoff said something like the biggest mistake he made with Redux was like teaching it in terms of its API and not the problems that it solves. And all of this product stuff we've been talking about the last couple months, couple years has been like, I'm convinced that if you're going to launch something, you need that cohesive story for why you would use this, what problems it solves. You still want the API docs. You still want people to understand the API, but the API is after they know that they need this thing.
Right.
It's kind of funny. We were talking about the phone launch, and it's how does it make you feel?
Right.
Versus what are its actual specs?
Right.
The specs come at the very,
very
end.
In the pie, it's like a little slice of it.
And so, what problems does this solve? And I think this is one of the reasons you've invested so much in add-on docs, and it gives you a way to tell this story. Like as an add-on author, I can now have a way to I now have a markdown file where I can just write and I can explain why I'm making this thing. And
Right.
Super powerful.
Yep.
Super powerful.
And even like the versioned docs is part of. You would, if Apple were launching an add-on, they would make sure it would have version documentation, right? So, yeah, you did fast boot testing, and it was like you nailed the product triangle there because well, maybe marketing, we have to do marketing. Yeah. That's the one slice we're missing, right?
There's all these features that people want in there.
Yep.
And they're awesome features. They will be in there one day.
Yep.
But they are not in the initial release. Because the initial release needs to be just I can visit a page in fast boot and I can run some assertions.
Right.
But it's more than that. It's also a video that we made.
Yep.
It's a doc site we made.
And those were more important than adding the features.
Yeah.
Because, and that's the thing, we can't get into it now. We're running out of time. But that's the thing where it's like you would think as an engineer who values coding, why are you spending time on a video and a doc site? You could have added three more functions and I would have been able to use them.
There's this awesome feature that's going to come in this fast boot testing that's going to be so incredibly helpful. And it's going to be so why aren't I working on that right now? Because it's going to be a kick-ass feature.
Yeah.
But I'm not.
Right.
This other, we need to get that launch right.
Yeah, because how much code is in, there's so much code out there, even in the tools we use like Ember CLI and other places, that it's just, if there's no docs and there's nothing like a video, I mean, that's why we have that's why we teach partly, is to help with this aspect, why it's valuable to surface this stuff, because if someone doesn't know about it, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, it's the whole, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah. So a lot more we could say on this subject, but I'm sure we'll continue to have this conversation, and it's going to be also part of what I talk about in the talk at EmberCamp next week. So
it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be live streamed, but it's going to be recorded, and so it'll end up online. So I'm looking forward to that.
Cool.
All right, thanks for sticking around, joining us this week, and we're not on EmberMap Slack is RIP now.
Yeah.
So
we're not on Ember Community Slack.
We're on
EmberMap Slack.
We have an EmberMap Slack.
You can join Twitter.
Yep, Twitter, and then Discord also has a media channel for us. Ember Weekends in there, and so we talk about some of the stuff we're doing, the podcast and the videos and conferences and stuff. So
sweet.
Cool. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.